Forget everything you think you know about the British Empire. It didn't start with soldiers marching or cannons firing. It began quietly, in the candlelit coffeehouses of 17th century London, with the hushed whispers of merchants and the scratch of a pen on a ledger. This is the story of how finance, not force, built the greatest empire the world has ever known. Long before the sun famously never set on British territory, London was a city scarred by plague and fire. But in the narrow alleys near Lombard Street, a revolution was brewing. Merchants, insurers, and speculators were creating a new kind of power. They were learning to manage risk, to bet on voyages that might never return, and to turn uncertainty into profit. But they had a problem. Gold was scarce, and the king's wars were expensive. By the late 1600s, the British crown was drowning in debt. Then, in 1694, a game-changing idea was born: the Bank of England. It wasn't a royal institution. It was a private bank formed by investors who lent money to the government. In return, the state gave them a remarkable power: the right to issue paper money, backed not by gold, but by the government's own debt. Suddenly, money wasn't just a metal coin. It was a promise. A piece of paper representing trust in the state. The modern economy had arrived. The government got the funds it needed for war, and the bankers got something even better: interest, paid forever. Every empire needs armies and ships, but Britain's secret weapon was its ability to borrow endlessly. While its rivals, like France and Spain, were scrambling to find physical gold and silver to fund their ambitions, Britain was simply printing confidence. Each military victory, each new colony, was financed not by stolen treasure, but by credit created out of thin air. War became an investment and peace became profitable. By the 1700s, London was the financial heartbeat of the world. Take the East India Company. It was a private corporation, backed by the crown and funded by thousands of investors, that came to rule over half of the Indian subcontinent. Its soldiers conquered territory, and its merchants extracted tea, silk, and spices. But the real profits were counted far away in the quiet offices of London. Financiers, sipping wine, watched their dividends pour in as the empire expanded. They had turned conquest into a business. When the company's armies crushed resistance in India, they didn't just seize land. They fundamentally re-engineered the economy. They imposed taxes that had to be paid in silver, forcing local producers into a system designed to feed London's balance sheets. Cotton from India, sugar from the Caribbean, gold from Africa. Every ship returning to Britain carried not just cargo, but compound interest. It was the financial return on domination. The genius of the British bankers, however, wasn't just in lending to their own empire. It was in lending to everyone. During the Napoleonic Wars, the Rothschild banking family famously financed both sides. Their network of couriers was so efficient they could move gold across war-torn Europe faster than armies could move troops. While Napoleon was fighting on the battlefield, financiers like Nathan Rothschild were controlling the flow of money that determined who could afford to keep fighting. When the Battle of Waterloo ended, the news reached Rothschild in London first, thanks to his private intelligence network. He used that information to make a fortune on the stock market in a matter of hours. This wasn't just luck. It was the power of information, the new gold of the empire. By the mid-19th century, Britain ruled the world not just by military might, but by finance. The pound sterling was the global reserve currency. Every port, every nation, every major deal was tied to London's credit. If you wanted to build a railway in Argentina, a canal in Egypt, or a port in China, you borrowed money from British banks, and if you failed to repay, the Royal Navy would show up at your doorstep. Warships became the ultimate debt collectors. The Opium Wars are a stark example of this financial imperialism. When China tried to ban the destructive British opium trade, the empire sent warships. The result? China was forced to open its ports, cede Hong Kong, and pay massive reparations. The London banks had financed the war. They profited immensely from the victory, and then they lent China the money to rebuild what had been destroyed. It was a perfect, brutal cycle: destruction, reconstruction, and debt. But an empire built on debt is a delicate thing. As the United States rose as a new industrial power, British financiers cleverly shifted their strategy. They invested heavily in American railways, oil, and steel, not planting flags, but planting capital. The financial DNA of London's Lombard Street was used to build Wall Street. The empire's methods survived even as its borders began to shrink. The world had learned Britain's secret. Control the credit and you control everything. The two world wars finally broke Britain's financial dominance. To fund the fight against Germany, Britain had to borrow heavily from its former colony, the United States. By the end of World War II, London's supremacy was over. The pound sterling gave way to the US dollar. But the system Britain had created, the model of global finance as an empire, was very much alive. Look around today and you'll see its fingerprints everywhere. The modern bond markets, central banking, insurance, futures contracts all were pioneered in London, designed to protect capital, not colonies. The physical empire may be gone, but its financial logic endures. The City of London, that tiny square mile within the capital, is still a global financial center, a sovereign kingdom of money with its own rules. The empire didn't die, it evolved. And here's the twist. The same financial ingenuity that built an empire now threatens to unravel global stability. Speculation often replaces real production. Debt grows faster than the economy. The tools once used to dominate other nations, mortgages, credit cards, derivatives, are now used to create a web of obligation for ordinary people. The empire's logic has turned inward. The greatest lesson of the British Empire is this: most powerful conquests are not fought with armies, but with interest rates. Empires rise and fall, but debt endures. The soldier's red coat and the banker's suit were just two different uniforms for the same mission: control. In the end, British bankers didn't just finance world domination, they invented the blueprint for it. They proved that belief, multiplied by credit, could build something stronger and more lasting than any army. And their descendants, in boardrooms and on trading floors, continue that work today. Not with colonies, but with contracts. Not with force, but with finance. The real empire never died. It just learned a new language. Instead of colonies, we have emerging markets. Instead of soldiers, we have algorithms. And instead of borders, we have balance sheets. Somewhere in the heart of London, behind glass towers and ancient stone, the same question echoes: how much can the world borrow before belief finally breaks? Because every illusion has its price. And one day, just as it has for every empire in history, the bill will come due. Thanks for watching. If you found this journey into the hidden history of finance as fascinating as I did, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss our next video. See you next time.